Hey everyone, Sawmill Charlie. Well, I got here in time to get things rolling, kind of setting my screen up. Looks like everybody's here. Michael, Laura, Dennis, Lee, there's Bob Walker. I'm going to go ahead and drop the link into the chat here and let everybody come in who wants to come in. And it's pinned to the top. Yeah. Well, hopefully your bees are doing well. Yesterday it was 72 degrees here in Maryland. And hey, Brian from Colorado, Larry.
Charles in charge. What's up?
Mr. Bob. Not
First
much.
victim of the night.
Huh?
First victim of the night. Man, I got.
Yeah, we had 57 people sign up for our beekeeping course at the college tonight that our club puts on, sponsors.
That's awesome.
So that is a lot of folks that we normally don't get. Hey, Randy. And
I figured out what my next big purchase is going to be. I've made my mind up. I just haven't decided on it yet. Which one? So,
hey, Greg. What was that?
A clarifier. I'm so sick of straining out honey. It takes so long to go through those little filter baskets. I spun out 25 frames. It was about 70 pounds of honey, and I gave up on straining it. So,
hey Charlie, hey Bob.
Hey, what's up?
I don't know that, I don't know much about those. I do know that Mr. Ed bought one and it was too slow for his operation.
Well, that's Mr. Ed's got crazy amounts of honey too. I don't have that.
Yeah, that's true.
So
what you bought, Bob?
Not yet.
He wants to buy a clarifier. That's where they have that slump,
It's a big tank, right? So you pour the honey in one end and it filters as it goes to the other end, and when it gets to the other end,
it's got chambers.
It's clear, yeah. So I think that's the next thing. Because I am sick.
Why don't let's make some honey first.
What are you having problems with that you need that?
I got that little damn metal strainer thing.
Yeah, so it chokes up after a while, that's for sure.
So when I spin out 25 frames, I got to keep stopping the gate to try to let it, and then it gets filled with wax, and it won't drain anymore. So I end up right now I'm just pouring it in a 5-gallon pail, letting the wax come to the top, and then I'm taking a separate 5-gallon pail and skimming all the wax off the top into the other thing to let those.
Well, we got JMK there. He said he has one. It's okay. Doesn't do as much as I hoped. Maybe JMK. How about come on and you can give us all a good education on how that thing works.
I didn't think I need a propane here. It's 70. It was 80 degrees out today. So
really?
What other options do you have?
What do you mean?
Like instead of buying the clarifying tank, I mean,
I've got the bottling tank, right? So if I pour it in the bottling tank and warm it up, the wax will come up to the top. But until you get to the bottom, but then you got all the wax inside of your bottling tank, right? Which is kind of a pain in the butt.
Hey, James made it on.
Well, he's driving probably.
I seen that guy on.
That's right, he's driving.
Shoot, I forget his channel. He's from overseas. He does a lot of videos. And
Gwendolyn Gruff.
No.
Black Mountain
Honey.
Him. He has a clarifying tank with a strainer on the top. It's a warming tank, and the top of the tank has a huge strainer on the top, and he has a hose that goes from his settling tank, like underneath his decapper.
But then you got to get the honey pump, and the honey pump is money.
Yeah, he has a honey pump that pumps it up there.
So my thing is, I don't have any bottles right now. I'm waiting on them to get here.
I'll tell you, you know, you might want to contact is Randall Carter, is it? Randall out in
North
Alabama.
Carolina or Alabama. Yeah, that's right.
Alabama. He had a nice video on his setup where he had a extractor, then he had a clarifying tank, and then he had a honey pump it up into his 55-gallon drums.
So I was going to be
might want to contact
more ghetto
him,
than
you
that.
know.
So I was going to be a little more ghetto than that. I was going to take the 5-gallon pails, like raise the clarifier up, then take the 5-gallon pail and dump it in one end so it'll strain as it goes to the other side, and then go ahead and once it's clear, I could just empty it straight into my bottling tank.
Now we got a new guest here. I subscribe to his channel. It's Chuck's Honeybees. He's down there in Jacksonville, Florida. Backyard beekeeper. And I want to say hi to Chuck.
Hey, Chuck.
And
Hey, Chuck.
He's got about, I don't know, 15, 20 hives and does queen rearing, grafting, and has some nice videos on that. He has some really beautiful looking cells and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
Chuck, if you want to come on, you can come on. And if you like, if you have a video and camera on your computer.
I listened to you today too, Charlie.
Huh?
I pay attention to you. So
what's that?
It's going to be all your fault. Hold on.
Okay. Now, Brad, I watched I didn't get to watch it all because I was getting late getting in here. And about the story frames and stuff. All right. So, all right, you have foundation in the middle and you got brood or your you got your
drone comb on the outside.
Drone comb on the outer edges. All right, what is that telling you? Anything?
Well, they rather build up for drones than they rather build up for worker brood right now because they completely left the worker brood alone. They didn't even try to build it out. They just built out drone comb on each side.
Right. You want to hear my philosophy?
Laid it up and capped it all. What's that?
My philosophy is that bottom box is so slammed with bees. And I haven't seen the colony. I haven't seen the video. But in my mind, I'm thinking that bottom box is so slammed with bees, they're preparing to swarm. And to do that, they have to have drones to leave behind.
Okay, well, let me tell you. It's a 3 deep tin frame, okay? I put a story frame in the bottom and the number 2. The number 3, I didn't put one in. I didn't really go into the boxes when I put the story frame in. I just moved the boxes, pulled the number 3 position out, put the story frame in, and closed them back up. And it's been 2 weeks. The bottom box is completely empty. All it had was nectar, full of bees, lots of bees, because the hive is packed with bees. But it was only nectar and pollen at the bottom. What she did, she moved up, I guess, over the winter into the 2nd and 3rd box. She's actually laying in the 3rd box and the 2nd box because the story frame I put in the bottom box, they never. If you look at the video, they never touched it.
So why haven't
drone?
You didn't think about reversing the boxes?
Well, that's what I did. I took my bottom box and moved it all the way to the top, and I just dropped the other 2 boxes straight down because she was in both of them. So now she has 2 bottom boxes to lay in, and I just I put the top box back. I mean, the bottom box that was just had nectar and pollen onto the top. But
welcome, Chuck. Sorry, Brad.
I had an 8 frame next to it, 8 frame, 3 deep. That queen is, I don't know if it's because it's only 8 frame hive. She has brooded all 3 boxes, and on their story frame, they laid up. She has all drone comb on each side, and they laid up the worker brood. So
She's getting to work.
they pretty thick right now. I found one queen cell that had a larva in it. It wasn't capped, but there was. So they getting ready to swarm because she laid in that queen cell, and there's a bunch of cubs that are dry, but she had one queen cell that had a larva in it.
Is that the
So
8 frame or is that the triple 10 frame?
That's the 10 frame that had a larva. The 8 frame is just packed with bees and brood with queen cups, no cells as far as with larvae in them.
In other words, I was right. Go ahead and say it.
Yeah,
you were
yeah,
right, Bob.
10
Okay, there you go. It's not often I have to take those those victories when you can. Hey,
But yeah, that 10 frame in that second box, they did have a larva in a queen cell.
okay.
Well, yep. All right. Sounds good, Brad. Welcome, Chuck, onto the show.
Everybody, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Good.
And
Good.
all.
Nice to be here.
I've been watching a few of your videos and stuff, especially the queen rearing thing. Has some great looking cells that you had there.
Yeah, I've been doing queens a long time, and I've been making videos a long time for a lot of different subjects. And I just finally said I need to start documenting these visits to the bee yard. It takes a little bit of extra effort to bring the camera out, to talk to the camera and kind of get set up, but I think it's important. Not only for me, I think, as a teacher or a communicator, you learn a little bit along the way, but I think it's also important to share the knowledge. And I can't tell you, I think everybody struggles for having information in their area, right? You kind of want to know, when are my flowers blooming? When are my bees swarming? Or when are my neighbors, seeing this? And as much as I love to watch Ian and Bob and Cayman and the folks all over the world, it doesn't help me right now. So I was like, I'm going to just start it off here, and maybe we can grow a little community kind of where I am and share a little bit of local knowledge. So anyway, that's kind of my impetus behind doing it. I'll try to keep it up. I have a passion for it, so I imagine I will.
Very good.
Now, what's your channel name?
You could probably Chuck's Honeybees is probably what you find it. I think you go at Chuck's Honeybees. I just started a couple days ago, but I'm believe it or not, in 2 days I'm up to almost 200 subscribers. Kind of goes pretty fast. I put up a lot of content. I put up something.
Don't tell Lee.
Don't tell Lee.
Something interesting that so I'm kind of a experimenter.
There it is.
I'm an experimenter, right? So I put up a video today that if you're interested in swarms, I'm coming up with something new. It may be commercially viable. I don't know. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of gelatin, glycerin, rubber. So you can mix water, gelatin, and glycerin. And oh, by the way, if you're doing extended release oxalic acid, you've got glycerin in your shop anyway. And you mix those together, it makes a rubber. And today I posted a video and made a batch of this rubber, and I impregnated it with my swarm lure, and it makes this gummy bear kind of a thing that you don't need to go rebait your swarm trap every few days. It just kind of stays there like those Swarm Commander medallions they make. Anyway, I did a little shop hobby experiment today. Take a look at it.
Bob's already invented it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I've got a swarm lure, but I use a little
yeah, the little vials work too. Yeah. What do you put in there though? You put like a wick or something?
It's polyacrylic crystal. So the lure's on the bottom and the moisture wicks up and hydrates the crystal. And as the crystal evaporates, it continues to wick. So when you come back
it's a
out,
wicking mechanism. Yeah.
Yep. And then
So
you
this
come
is
back.
like an evaporating rubber mechanism, I guess you could say. So same philosophy of just trying to figure out how to not use a Ziploc bag and a
Yep.
cotton swab kind of a thing. That's cool. Yeah, I've seen the vials.
Well, the biggest thing that people have with the Man Lake type of vial is they have, from a retail perspective, from what I've gathered, all the stores that I've talked to, is they have to keep them refrigerated or frozen until they sell them and use them. So they'll have a whole freezer full of vials. Mine, because of the way it works, you don't have to refrigerate it. So
Gotcha, Chuck.
You might have found that looked like you found my little YouTube short. And I tell you what, these YouTube shorts are funny. You got to stick it in a vertical phone thing, and you got to do it in 60 seconds. I made a queen rearing video that I had to squeeze into 60 seconds. You go try to do that. It's hard. It was like cut. Yeah. Anyway, I did it, but it's in there. Anyway, you got to keep the kids happy.
And sometimes when you're making your videos, you don't realize it's running, and you run into a problem. You're there like, what am I going to do? And you're thinking to yourself, and you don't realize you're supposed to be telling the people that you're making the video for what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So you got to kind of go back and redo it.
So tomorrow I'm going to Domino and pick up syrup. So that'll be fun.
Man, you lucky you got a place like that you can just run over there and get.
It does take me 3 hours round trip driving, but I gotta. But the difference is it's $1 a gallon for 1-to-1. I mean,
that's
cheaper than buying the sugar, So
and the time to have to mix it up.
Yeah, I just shoot it.
Just to take.
You see how I do it? I pour half a 5-gallon bucket into an empty 5-gallon bucket, and then shoot them both full of water and pour them into my feeders.
So what's your bees doing, Chuck? As far as, I know you're in Florida, so what's the average temperature down there now?
It was 85 today. Lows are in the low 60s right now. So we're in swarm season now. Matter of fact, one of my hives, I think it was a sick hive, but it had some cells in it, and I looked in there. It may have swarmed. People in my neighborhood have already had swarms. I have not had one yet, unless this one might have. So that's kind of where we're at. I'm at, on my double deeps, I'm at like 10 frames of brood. So I'm pulling them out as fast as I can so they don't pop. My peak of swarm season is March 11th. So once I get past March 11th, I'm kind of on the downside, and I can kind of let them build up a little bit. So I've kind of got to survive through the peak swarm season here for about 3 more weeks.
So when you're pulling brood out and kind of equalizing, are you making splits with the brood, or?
Yep, splits, queen rearing. Splits for my cells. Like, I got 26 cells in the incubator right now. I just got put another 20 cells in the finisher today. So I'm making about 20 a week, 25 a week, selling to the neighbors or people that want to drive here to pick them up. A few, but I don't have that many people coming to get them. So so splits, selling cells, and then equalizing. I try to not run more than 15 full-on production hives in my area without going to an out yard. So I'm not commercial or anything. It's borderline sideline. You could argue I'm sideliner because I'm selling things, but as far as number of hives, I'm really not.
Have you started shipping your queens?
I don't ship. Mine are VSH POL line 2 queen daughters of a breeder queen that came out of Louisiana. So they're second generation much, you could say, in my area. But I put one of my videos on there. I'm at 0 mites on pretty much all of my hives right now. Came out of winter with like 3 to 5, and I got them down to 0 at about now. But I'm giving all of that to extended release oxalic acid treatments that I do with chipboard. And I've started to.
What do you mean chipboard?
So chipboard is like the term for cardboard that is like what you would find on the back of a legal pad. That gray brown chipboard. It's like, and they measure it like mils, and it's like 60 mil chipboard. So it's like cardboard, but not corrugated. It's that flat stuff.
So you just absorb it into the chipboard?
Yeah, and actually, this is out of the recipe out of Argentina that is actually branded down there called Aloe and Cap. And Randy's looked at it, but Randy doesn't like the hanging between the frames. And Randy and I have had conversations about this for 10 years. He and I don't agree on this. He wants to put things on top of the hives, but he's commercial. I get it. Do it. But when you put things on top of the hives, you can't get in the hive like my kind of beekeeper wants to do without breaking that up. So I like my strips to go between the frames. So I hang things over the frames.
Like a apivar strip or something.
Very similar. So these are chipboard strips hung over and down between the brood frames, not like sponges or shop towels on top. And and I, it works very well for me. And I'll make another video about that. I haven't made one yet because I haven't made another batch since I started making videos, but it's working really, really well. Not that you don't need to kind of switch it around and do a vapor or do something else, but when I check my mites, they're at 0.
Are you using vegetable glycerin?
Yeah, I use the vegetable glycerin. I use the standard oxalic acid everybody gets. So yeah, vegetable glycerin, oxalic acid, water, and the chipboard strips that measure.
I was going to try to go with something like that because my mites, my bees came out of winter heavily infested. Matter of fact, I lost 10 out of 30 hives, and I checked them again today. All I had did after winter, I gave them a couple of shots of the vapor, and I had the 3 hives that I checked. Now they're all 3 deep hives, but 2 of them had 7 mites in a cup of bees, and 1 of them had 8 mites in a cup of bees. So they still got a pretty good infestation.
Yeah.
And when I broke open the boxes, I actually seen mites in the drones. So they're in there.
You got to monitor. You got to know where you're at. That's for sure. I see a question on there. Is that from somebody?
Yeah, that's from Brian for you, Chuck. It says, if you catch a swarm, have you requeen? Do you requeen it? Or?
I don't. It depends. I mean, half the swarms I catch have my dots from the other ladies that I marked, but it's not a law to requeen it if that's what this question is. Open mate queens. So we don't have an Africanization problem here. You can open mate queens. You can do anything you want in Florida. If you hadn't been watching politics, Florida is almost the land of the free. You can do whatever the hell you want, but it's not a requirement due to Africanization, which is what I think that is leaning towards as far as open mating. I don't have any aggressiveness that is problematic in my area. That doesn't mean it isn't here. And the inspectors do come and they do check. And actually, I have to pay an additional registration fee to sell queens in the state of Florida. And as part of that registration fee, they take my queens and they send them to the University of Florida and they check for genetic Africanization in my colony. So there is a regulatory process around selling queens in Florida, but the inspector takes care of that for me.
All right. So Nancy here, she wants to know, I presume it's the strips that you're saying that you're putting down there.
Yeah.
It's oxalic acid with glycerin, correct? Just like
it's the Randy Oliver recipe. I'm not messing with Randy's recipe. The only thing Randy and I differ on is the substrate that you put it in and how you use it. Randy is he and his sons want to lift those lids and throw those things in there and move on. They don't want to spend the number of minutes in the hive that I'm willing to do. I've found when you throw something on top of the bars, if you've ever put a pollen patty on top of the frame, it's a pain in the butt to go in there and work the hive. You got to scrape the pollen patty off. You move it over to the side so you can lift the frames out. It's the same sort of thing by putting any of those things across the top bars, and leaving it there for 3 months like you're doing with this. So I like to hang things across the top. I used to use shop towels years ago. I draped them over the frames and hung them in there. But the problem with the shop towels, there's no rigidity to it. It's like pushing a rope. You can't push a shop towel between frames. But with this chipboard, you can push it down in there like an apivar strip, and you can slide it down in there nice and tight. And it's got the same exact number of grams of oxalic acid.
So we're using like a nail like you do in apivar? To hang it?
No, there's no nail. I did gravity. Just I drape it over the top bar.
You drape it over both sides.
Yeah. It's a matter of fact, I take the chipboard, I cut on a big paper cutter. I kind of pre-fold them, and as they're pre-folded in the big kind of a shape of a staple, a big long staple. I put them in the bag that way, and then I dump all the goo in there, and then I soak them in that form, and they're already bent in that shape. And then when I'm ready to put them in the hive, I pull them out of the bag, and they just kind of go straight over the edges. If you look in any of my videos, you'll see them in my videos. I don't think in StreamYard we can show that.
Where do you get these chipboards? Or I presume it's like a cardboard type of stuff.
Oh yeah, you can get on Amazon. It's just 60 grain or 60 whatever chipboard. I'll find a link if you need it. But yeah, it's
hey, Lee, find a link.
Yeah. The only magic about the chipboard is the density. If you get the stuff that's too thin, it gets mushy. It would be like soaking a piece of paper, right? It would just turn into mush. The thickness kind of matters as far as holding up to the oxalic acid and the glycerin.
And Laura, she wants to know how many you put in, like 2?
Yeah, it's like 2 strips per deep is kind of what I do. And I think that, and Randy has done a good job determining the number of grams you need for efficacy. And okay, so here's a link here. Can I post on StreamYard on your channel?
I think you can. Yeah, you got to do present. Click. I think is there a percent in front of it? Arby?
No, if he's not a moderator in your YouTube channel, it's not gonna post up the link. He can put it in private chat, and you can copy and paste it down.
Okay, I'll do that. Let me get this link here.
Lee, there he goes. Chipboard, Amazon. Boom.
Okay, there we go. Lee's got it. One? Yeah, he's my hidden engineer.
There you go. Yeah, and listen, this is not magic. I mean, there's a lot of different substrates. My point on this is I, as a sideliner, don't mind putting something between the sidebars, because when I go want to lift a frame out and look at the bees, this chipboard strip just hangs over it. I don't have to like scrape it off the top bars in order to work my hive. That's the only difference. I think the
Bob, you get
any
same. royalties? Any royalties off of Charlie for using Lee up like that?
No, I should be. I've got to renegotiate my contract.
Yeah, because I think he's been on the table, and you
notice Lee hadn't been showing up in all these live chats because he's busy running everybody's back rooms for him.
He's behind the scenes running everything. But getting back to what he was talking about, Cayman Reynolds put a video out today. And he was talking about the sponges, on how it would have more contact if they were actually hung between the frames, but they do it for commercial reasons because it's quicker to put those sponges on top. But you would get better contact on the bees if they were hanging between the frames. And
I can tell you, I have an observation hive in my barn shed, and I sit there and watch the bees in my observation hive, and they're crawling all over these things and it's amazing to watch them. And I'm like, oh my God, there's oxalic acid draping all over that bee, just walking all around it. Not that they wouldn't be in between the bars too.
Yeah, but they'd more between those frames, and their backs would be touching against that sponge as they're going up and down that frame, where they have to go to the top and actually walk on it to, you know, to get contact.
And I mean, listen, and I'm not going to fight Randy on this at all, like publicly. The goal is the number of grams of oxalic acid that can sustain itself in the hive without the substrate deteriorating and being kicked out before the efficacy is over. So if you can have a substrate in the hive for about the 48 to 60 day period, I think the success will be there. As a sideliner, I don't want to have to scrape that off for the next 48 days to get in my hive. Randy may not go back in his hives for that 48-day period. So I think it makes sense, for somebody like him. For me, I'm going to get in my hive during swarm season, every week to check for swarm cells. I don't want to be scraping sponges off the top. That is why I went between the frames with the chipboard. And I migrated from shop towels, which I did use for the last 10 years.
I seen a guy use the paper that you strip
drywall paper
with.
Drywall paper.
And he would cut those into strips, and he would hang them across one frame like a big stapler. He would soak.
They're doing that in New Zealand and I think Australia. And there's a guy that's taking 3 layers of that drywall paper and running it through a sewing machine so that it's like mashing 3 pieces of it together, and to get more, almost the thickness of the chipboard. Yeah, it's the thickness and the absorption, how much it can hold, right? So it's how much oxalic acid can a piece of paper hold. But that sheetrock paper doesn't deteriorate like a piece of paper in your printer would. It's got some substance to it. So good on you for noticing that too.
Mm-hmm.
Laura wants to know where you can hang the Swedish towel. Now I've thought about this, and where if you cut it and maybe use a hole puncher, where you could put like a nail hole in it, and
it's just a little thick. It's almost the whole B space, a soak sponge. It really wouldn't go down. In my experience, my chipboard is almost too thick to go down between the B space. So, if you've ever taken a Swedish sponge and you've ever used them, once they're soaked, they're about the full 3/8 inch B space thickness. Yeah.
Well, we got some international guests coming in. Hey, Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
Hello, Kyle.
He's from New Zealand, Chuck.
Hey, Kyle.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, yeah. So no need to get the wife involved.
I just thought I'd put my 2 cents in.
Turn the volume up, Kyle, a little bit.
There you go. That's my chipboard strip right there.
Let me see if we can bring that up. Turn it sideways, Carl. Kyle. Turn it a little bit so we can see it on the camera better.
That's it.
Okay.
See how it's folded over like that? You fold it over before you soak it, just so you don't have to bend it when it's all wet. And that sucker just hangs over the frame and goes the full length of the frame almost.
And you put 2 of those per deep?
2 to 3 per deep. Yeah, 2 is all you really need. Here's the bag of them.
Yeah. Oh, so they come in a bag?
No, you got to make them. I mean, this chipboard you got to cut with a paper cutter. They don't come in strips.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Yeah, no, I just stuck them in the bag. This product here is called Coverboard.
Coverboard.
It's probably just another term for chipboard, coverboard. It's a very scrapbookers use it, the back of photo albums, that sort of thing. It's a nice thick stock for
you just cut it with a paper cutter, right?
Paper cutter, or you can lay it on a mat with a razor blade.
Yeah, it comes in a big roll. What this product here is for people who are doing up kitchens or painting or whatever, and you put it down on the floor to cover the floor. So
that's the contractor board.
Wide roll at about 30 meters or something like that. And then I just reel off a piece about 300, 400 and cut it down with the razor blade, then on the thing and whip them out into strips like this. And then lay them in a container and put my oxalic acid and glycerine mix on top and leave it for about 2 days to soak in. And then I hang them to dry. And because of our humidity, it's quite important for me to dry these slightly. Otherwise, they just collect water inside the hive and it all drips on the floor.
Yeah.
But I would, I can't see everyone's names, but one of you guys was saying, Brad, you were saying that you came out of winter with a reasonably high mite load.
Yes.
And you were going to try these. I would recommend that you try something with a much better known knockdown before you start using these, because our experience seems to be that what you start with when you start using the oxalic acid is what you're going to have when you finish, or it's going to be a bit of a plane. Okay, so if you're trying to knock them down from a high level, I'd rather you use something a bit more known first and then go to the strips, because it seems to be a bit of a level playing field when you use these. So you want to have low numbers to start with and then start using the oxalic acid. And just
use it to maintain.
Yeah, you can knock them back with the vapor pretty good, and then these will keep you going.
Well, that's what I was going to try to do. I was going to try to do a couple more rounds of vapor for like every 5 days, and then stick something in the hive at least till I get through the honey flow, and then I can go
Yeah.
ahead and because I usually use I didn't use it last year. That's why I'm in this problem. Apivar strips after the honey flow, and oxalic acid in November, December. But all I used was the oxalic acid um, in the fall, and I couldn't get to the bees during the wintertime like I should have. And I had 10 of them that just died and absconded. And the rest of them that I have are doing good. I mean, a lot of them are 2 and 3 deep hives, but they have a lot of mites in them.
So
Yeah.
one of the things that I get quite a bit, depending on the colony that these go into, is that they will sometimes remove brood and or not utilize the cells that the strips are sitting on, on the frame. So you'll get
Yeah.
strips in your brood chamber that aren't
Yeah,
being used. It's not
they
every
do that with
hive,
my
but
Apis.
it's
They do
the
that with the
majority.
Apivar strips. If the Apivar strip kind of leans to one side, they won't put any brood where the Apivar strip is at. So it's kind of like the same thing with the Apivar.
Yeah, that's what
But
I
it's
want to ask you.
colony dependent though, because I've got others that will lay up perfectly well underneath them. So I'm not, it's genetics, I think.
Well,
Yeah.
with Chuck, with like Apribar, when you put that in there, it usually they kind of chew the wax down on the comb, and you can see where
Yeah.
the strip was hanging. Do you find having that problem with this cardboard stuff?
Some of it, but honestly, I think part of it is the bee space too. You're putting something in there and they're creating the bee space so they can walk around it. I don't think it's 100% them just trying to get away from the oxalic acid. I think they're trying to maintain bee space, and that's part of it. And when they create the 3/8 inch behind it, there isn't enough room for the bee cell. A lot of times I do see those little things, and when I work a frame, like I was just describing, I'll slide it over to let them, build it back out. So it's not a problem when you move them around, but I have seen that, Charlie, to your point.
Now, Lee's put up a couple of different, what do you call it, for Amazon for these things, but you were saying to make sure that you get, what is it, the thickness type?
Yeah, I think I just found my last order that I ordered in December. It was
This stuff's
50
about a mil and a half thick.
50
50
point was what I ordered. It's 0.05 inches, 50 point. Now this stuff that that Kyle is mentioning, and that's a fascinating idea. I have seen it at our hardware stores. It's that stuff contractors roll out so they don't track on your hardwood floors, kind of thing. But I swear, if you bought one of those rolls, you'd have enough chipboard to, do entire neighborhood for a year. It's a lot. So maybe the little Amazon order would be a smaller amount to order, but I think it's the exact same base material. It's just about the thickness.
Same principle. Yeah.
Yeah, the one I'm looking at here, it says 50 Eco Swift 5x7 chipboard cardboard crafts scrapbook.
Yeah, so 5x7 is too small. 11x17 is what you need to get so that when you cut the strips, they'll go over and down the frames. So you need the longer ones so that you can fully hang across a Langstroth frame on both sides. When you think about that frame being, about
All right, he's got
9
another one here. It says 5.5x11, or like basically a sheet of paper. So that's 22 point, which is too thin.
Yeah, 50. You need 50.11x17. So why don't you just search Amazon for that?
Okay.
And honestly, I say you need. That's what I'm using with the thickness I want, so I get the strip lengths I want. Kyle just, found an enormous piece that he can cut whatever size he wants out of that enormous, it's probably 3 feet across, I imagine. He cuts the size he wants. If you get a tiny little 5x7 piece of chipboard, you're going to find you got this tiny little piece of cardboard that you don't know what to do with. To create that full, long staple shape to hang across the frame, you need something that's about 17 inches, long. And cut it about 1.5 inches or 2 inches wide.
Yeah, all right. So I got it here. It's 25 chipboard sheets, 11x17 inch, 50 point, heavy.
That'll work. That'll work. That's
brown
it.
craft board.
That's what I'm using.
And if you
one-
take a sheet, is that sheet you just cut it in half to get one strip out of that, or how wide do you
So,
usually put it?
I don't know, Kyle. What do you? It look like my strips are about the same size. I don't know, about an inch and a half, or about 3-4 centimeters, something like that, wide.
Yep. 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 Yep.
Inch and a half.
3 to 4 centimeters. Yeah, is good. It's enough to hold the cardboard together. You don't want to go too thin, otherwise what they do is they take away this stuff. They'll chew it all up and transport it out of the hive. So it has a bit more of an action to it than just laying strips on top of the hive. Now that depends on your bees themselves and how hygienic they are, of course, because some will strip them down within days and transport it out of the hive, and some won't. So it's just the same as a shop towel. Some will destroy those in a matter of weeks, and some won't. So it's it's
Yeah.
Okay.
one of the followers was saying, Nancy Tasker, she was saying to use formic to knock down the bees. I'm kind of afraid of it right now because we're already getting up to like 80, 85 degrees in the daytime. So I'm
Well,
kind of
she's in
afraid to.
Pennsylvania, and you're in
Huh?
Louisiana. Nancy's in Pennsylvania, right? She's saying
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
Formic.
She's
Yeah.
about 2 hours north of me.
Yeah, Formic. I don't use Formic either for the same reason, being in South
I would think that you
Carolina.
could use it later in the season, like September, where it's cooler.
Yeah. How about does Apagard have a heat tolerance
or when
to
you've
it?
got all your
Yeah,
queen
about
cells
90
ready to
some.
go.
Huh?
What'd you say, Kyle?
Or when you've got all your queen cells nearly ready to go, and then if you have any failures, you've got them. You've got it sussed anyway. You've got replacements straight away, right? So
Yeah.
it's one of the things we
Yeah.
do. Is a re-queening. If anyone's, a lot of guys will use formic at that point. Okay.
Yeah, because I'm planning on requeening just about everything because I got a lot of older queens, and then I got some that I made late in the year last year, and I've checked them today, a couple of them, and they got spotty brood. They're not bred well, so they spotting up. So they got a good enough hive that I'm gonna just requeen them and get some better queens in there. So yeah, I'm probably gonna start in about 2 weeks to graft and try to get some queens. So I might put something in the hives then, like you said. And if I have some queens, if I have some queen failures, well, then I could just. But I was wondering about Apagard. I didn't know what the tolerance on it was.
Well, I've been using Apivar in the spring, right before they start brooding up good. I put that in to knock them down in the spring, and then I treat with OA in the fall, and that's worked so far. Still have percentage of loss like anybody, but what can you do? At this point, so.
Well, now when it comes to April Guard, I'm going to try that this year myself, but I'm going to do 25-gram doses once a week for 4 continuous weeks. And you can get in the 90s with that. I'm going to say 95 or better, because we were on with Craig Branch Wednesday night, I guess it was.
Yeah, Wednesday.
And he was talking about that a little bit. And all. So it's something new that I'll have to check out myself. I mean, the thing, if you buy the tub of Apagard, which is the gel in a tub, then you get a syringe, and then you have the option to put in different doses depending on how much humidity and how much heat there is. I mean, normally the normal dose is 50 grams for 2 weeks. Well, that's fine. But if you're at 95 degrees, Cayman will say he put in like 33. That was more or less the mathematic part of it. Or Craig said, I did 25 for 4 continuous weeks, and he had no issues.
Well, if you got over 10 hives, you might as well go with the tub because the price is a lot better on the tub than on those packets. I was looking at that.
Right. And so that's something that I'm going to look into and all. I mean, I do formic here, but I'm very cautious with that. It's got to be below 80 degrees and with low humidity. And I think humidity, they don't say nothing about it in their instructions, but I think humidity has a huge, um, it's huge about as far as the queen problems and stuff. I think it's more so than, the heat and all, in my opinion. So,
I definitely think that last year and this year has helped because I went to the alternating, right? I was just doing oxalic acid, but then I started alternating different different treatments, and so this is just another tool in the toolbox, right? A lot of people are saying, like DC, I've been using OA, but he's been using OA in different methods, right? Vape, strips, pads, and so I think it's all about not letting those mites become resistant to whatever treatment you're treating them with. So alternating and kind of trying to keep them off guard a little bit.
So Brad, you if you do your strips and your vaping, I do them both at the same time. But I would just be checking to make sure that it's actually doing something. That's the key to it. It's not so much what you're doing, whether it's actually blooming working. So it doesn't matter what you use. That checking on your success rate is key to it, because you really don't want to be going into your flow with stressed out bees.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, you ready for my next big secret?
okay, go ahead.
Small hive beetles. You guys got them?
Oh, I got them.
Those the Southern boys here, dude. I don't have
All
too
right.
many.
All right. So Dr. Lewis Bartlett in University of Georgia spoke recently. Bob Benny put it on his channel about a project he's doing with oh God, these science words are hard. Chlorantripinol. Anyway, it's a long word. And he also did some analysis on clothanidin. These are both beetle larva insecticides that have been used in almonds and in golf courses for larva control on turfs. Without a doubt, no matter what, I think all of us right now could put chlorantraniliprole that you can get at Home Depot that's sold for grub management under our hives, so that no small hive beetles crawl out of your hives and can pupate. That is a no-brainer at this point, I think. He has done some efficacy studies that show that there is no mortality to bees at the LD50 rate that kills the beetles in the hive. Obviously, in-hive treatments is something that's not for everyone, but it's an interesting read if you're looking at what kills beetles but doesn't kill bees in the hive. But outside the hive, this stuff is something you can buy at your hardware store that you can put under your hives. And just like some people do salt, some people do vinegar, some people buy chickens, whatever you need to do to keep beetles from pupating under your hives, this is another thing. Nothing else. You ought to just go watch the video on Bob Benny's channel, Dr. Lewis Bartlett, University of Georgia, on this discussion, because it's fascinating. And I think there's a whole lot going to come out of it.
Yeah, I watched that video. It was just basically either spray it or sprinkle it underneath there, and it did a good job.
Well, the granules you can buy at the hardware store would be like putting out fertilizer granules kind of thing. You can buy a concentrate form, aceleprins aversion, with the primary ingredient, being the active ingredient in the liquid that you have to dilute. But obviously, the active ingredient is the important thing to look at on the label if you're going to treat your lawns or your under your hives with something to fight the larva. Some guys in South Florida have had some really, really good success with it. Beetles are bad here. The bad, especially when you don't have a winter that kills anything. And they don't get in and take over a hive, but you'll open a healthy hive and you feel like there's 300 in there. I've gotten them down to where I see 1 to 2 so far this year. Not they won't get bad this August, but that's where I am right now.
On my strong hives, I can actually pull out a frame because the bees will push them all on one frame just about if it's a strong hive, and you could take that frame out and knock it on something and just start smashing them because they're mostly confined to
Yeah.
one frame in the hive, or they'll
Yep.
take, if you got an inner cover, I have them where sometimes they'll run them up through the inner cover, in between the inner cover and the top cover, and you just got to smash them all up.
Yeah.
Because once you break it, they start running everywhere.
In my observation hive, I watch where they put all this propolis, and then the beetles go in these little traps, and then the bees, they've even got this on video where the bees will feed the beetles, and they've got this little thing that they do to tickle them, and they feed them. But I have actually watched my bees have continued to build propolis and have actually enclosed the beetles inside there. And now there's like rotting beetles in these little jails they put them in. So I think at some point they actually do completely put them in jail if us humans don't come pop the lids and break them all free. But in my observation hive, I've watched them send them all the way to their demise by closing them up.
If you ever bought those little square discs that the beetles will go in the four corners,
propolize all the holes up.
Yeah, the bees will lock them in there.
Beetle jails, I think, is what those are called. Yep.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep. Yeah.
But then the problem is they're not effective anymore because the beetles can't get in.
You're right.
Yeah,
you got to
go in there. You got to open them up and clean them up. So I stopped using that. It was just becoming a pain. When I had one or two hives, it was okay, but with 25, 30, it's just too much of a pain.
Yeah, I understand for sure.
So, Kyle, what time is it at your place in New Zealand?
It's 3:52 p.m.
on the 25th.
On the 25th.
We're talking to the man from the future right now.
Yeah, exactly. First day in the world. First country in the world to see the sun.
What's the stocks? Is the stocks going up? We need to get our purchases in so we can make some money today.
Yeah.
So,
but I did I went out and put feed on the starter finisher and some pollen patty out there today. I made some pollen patty up with Ian's.
All right, Chuck. Now, Chuck, he runs a starter finisher. How do you take and populate? Now, there's one thing I did notice in your videos. I think I got it right. Is that I was talking to, like Benny and them guys, they put the cells in the bottom pen frame and put the queen upstairs, and then they switch it after 48 hours and all that. But now it looked like to me that you just keep her down in the bottom.
Yeah, I keep her in the bottom because I don't want the foragers coming in messing with those queen cells. So I want all nurse bees up top. So I put the queen in the bottom. I put my double screen board on the ground. I will shake almost every single bee except for the queen into my top box.
Yeah.
And then I will put my double screen board on top of a queen excluder so that I can just leave the queen excluder on there. When I pull the double screen board out, I'll open the entrance. I'll let the drones and all the foragers relieve. So it's a free flying starter, but all of the nurse bees or anybody that feels like staying is overcrowding that top box. And then all the foragers and the drones come back to the entrance that they know. In Bob Benny's scenario of putting the starter on the bottom, you got a lot of drones and foragers down there drawing those cells out. And I prefer just to have nurses up top. Personal choice.
And of course, the foragers won't tear the cells down, but they're not going to do anything about feeding or anything like that.
Yeah, they're not any part of the process of drawing those cells out. So they can create an overcrowded scenario by having those bodies in there, though. That does kind of make them all kind of crunched up in there. But I don't think they help at all. It's personal technique. I've had success with it, and it's much quicker to put back together when I'm done. You just up, down, and it goes pretty good. As long as the hive is populated enough that when you shake all the bees into that top box, you just need them there for 24 hours. And then it's a free-flying finisher with just a queen excluder at the end, and they draw them out pretty good.
So you find that the 24-hour method is a bit, as far as cells acceptance, is just as good as I've heard 48 hours a lot of times.
I don't think that matters. For me, having a full-time job and not necessarily working in town, time is my management. So I try to get them in there and get it all reconfigured as quick as I can.
All right. So
Yeah.
Now, do you? Okay, that's right. I'm. See, I've always used just a nuke that's a queen, just a starter, and I just leave in there for 6 days, and um, take and let them cap. The way I count it is this: the day I graft, that's day number 1. Day number 6 is when they're capped, and that's when they're going into the incubator.
Yeah.
And then I leave them. I've been leaving them in there for 5 days, and then putting them in a mating box because they're going to hatch within a day and a half or so, and doing it that way. Now with what you're doing, you're finding the queen on the frame, shake everything else in that top box. You leave the queen excluder on there, put your double screen board on there. They're flying out the back entrance, coming around, whoever is the forager or whatever, going into where the queen's at, and then you got whatever's left is left. And then you wait 24 hours. So then you pull your double screen out, and then you got your queen excluder already sitting there, and you just let it lay down on there, and they'll finish the cells out.
They will. And you could argue that if you said, well, you took all your nurse bees away, in my 24-hour scenario, I only took them away for 24 hours, right? So, that bottom box is going to be fine in warm weather without keeping, chill brood or anything like that. If you're getting freezing weather, you might want to decide, do you want to shake all your nurse bees into your top box, because you might not have any nurse bees covering the brood in the bottom box other than the foragers and the drones that will be down there. But in my climate right now, I don't need to worry about that. If I did worry about that, I would probably do a little bit different method with and Randy Oliver's talked about this too, where you leave the bottom box alone, you add 2 more boxes, and essentially you have a 5 frame and a 5 frame and a triple stack. But either way, the point is I don't have a separate starter. My starter finisher is the same hive. It's a production hive. If next week I don't want to graft out of that one, I'll just go to another strong production hive. I don't have any extra equipment or extra bees that got to find a new home when I'm done raising queens.
Well, after you explaining it, it makes it, I understand it now, but much better,
Yeah.
And it, like you say, it's pretty darn easy.
It gets the emergency impulse going. 24 hours of emergency impulse is all you really need to get them to start drawing the cells. And then a nice strong hive that's well fed with pollen and a lot of nurse bees is all you need to do to get them to finish them. As long as a queen can't get in there.
When it comes to finishing, they're going to equalize out, and they're always going to go to the cells to make sure they're nice and warm. Now, as far as cold weather, I mean, I'm in Maryland and next to Baltimore. If it's going below 40 degrees at night, forget about it. You don't even think about starting cells.
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff. It's got to be in this, at night, at least in the 60s, and, that, I mean, it basically
depends on colony strength thing.
Cajun.
Yeah. The number of bees, like Kyle just said, really matters. I mean, you can do it with a lot of bees. Yeah.
Brad had to leave because his son came in from college. That's why he popped out real quick. But no, I really like that. I like the concept on that. And then that way, when you keep your queen excluded there, you take out your double screen. Now they're going to equalize between the 2 hives. And I would say, let's see, are you switching any frames around as far as the top frames upstairs, as far as brood frames or anything?
Well, when I set up the starter, I do make sure there's some young larvae up top, and I try to make sure there's pollen and a lot of stuff. But you need resources in the top for raising queen cells. Everything else can go on the bottom. So resources being pollen, food, and then nurse bees.
Okay. I'm just thinking about where my starter, I usually put cat brood in there to kind of keep that. Well, you're not going to wait that long anyway.
24 hours. That cat brood, I might get a few extra in there, but yeah. The cat brood, and some people, if you don't use the shaker all the way up top, and sometimes you need some open brood to make the nurse bees come up and cover them. But since I'm shaking them all in there anyway, they don't have anywhere to go.
Right. They can't go anywhere and all that. So, yeah. Okay. That's interesting. I might have to try that myself this year.
Yeah.
It'll be late April, around the 1st of May for me to do that. Unless I might use a license hive and all. I presume I seen a frame beater in there. So you're, what are you doing? 1-to-1, obviously, I think.
A little bit thinner than that right now to get a little bit more wax building to, get some of those extra frames built out. I have this sugar syrup. I made a video about that too. People want to know my sugar syrup. I use typical 1-to-1, a little bit thinner this time of year, but I do a little bit of Honeybee Healthy, just a little bit. And I'm also using a 2X Manly recipe of thymol syrup to keep my fermentation down. So it's got a tiny little bit of thymol in there. You can use bleach to keep your fermentation and your mold down this time of year too. The bees don't mind a little bit of bleach and a little bit of syrup. It keeps the mold down. But I chose to use thymol because I had some in the shed, honestly, and I was like, oh, what am I going to do with this thymol these days? So I made some thymol syrup out of it.
Okay. We'll put some Apis Biologic in ours.
Yeah.
Bob, he's the East Coast salesman for that. I actually had some and I used it in the fall, and it definitely works as far as, making brood and stuff like that. So I'm hoping it'll make the bees, produce a lot more roll jelly and all.
Yeah.
And all
I do think if you're grafting, priming those cells with some royal jelly is important if you have it or something in there. I think it makes the larva stick a little bit better at the bottom of the cell. It probably gets them going a little bit easier. If you're cracking down swarm cells anyway, don't throw away that jelly. Pop it out, put it in a little jar, and throw it in the freezer so you have it.
Well, does it get? I mean, I take a Chinese like you were showing there, and I usually go down the cell wall, and it goes across the bottom. It scoops up the jelly with the larvae on top. So do you find with priming it, it pulls that jelly comes off of that tool better?
It does. The surface tension of the liquid in the cell at the same time I'm plunging it off, it seems to roll off a little easier for me. And I think it also adds to the larva's risk of desiccating goes down a little bit more because you've actually got more liquid there than they truly need at that age. So it helps come off the plunger, keeps them from desiccating. A lot of people are worried about covering up the larva with a towel. If you've primed your cells and that larva is sitting in there, you really probably don't even need to cover the towel with a towel if you're going to get it all done within a half an hour.
A lot of people talk about, I take a towel and I water it, and then I put it in the microwave and warm it, By the time I get done grafting, it's cool. And I think the larvae and all in the cells, they're a little more tougher than what you think they are. I'm not talking about setting them out for 2 hours. I mean, just like you say, go out from the yard to your shed and back. I'm going from the yard to my house and back. They seem to be pretty tough. But now, do you have when you prime it like that? The only thing I was concerned about is the larvae, let's say, rolling. Maybe I don't know whether it would roll out of that jelly that's sitting on or not.
I know what you're talking about. I've wondered if they've ever rolled, and I've never seen them flip. When I pick them up in one direction, they go back in that one direction. So I don't seem to have that problem. It feels like it helps. And I will also say that, if you've got a cell that's been in your shed, it's got a little sawdust on it. If it hadn't been, polished by the bees or whatever like that, if you prime them a little bit, it's kind of got the right mixings in there.
Do you believe in the polishing the cells?
It's no different than an air. I have done it. I think it's great. I don't think it makes any difference. I think it's the same as taking an air hose and cleaning out your cells.
I don't do it. I mean, I
don't think it's magical. I think it's just using the bees to clean them.
I just put the cells out of the plastic bag, put them on the bar, and I'm done. I just put stuff in them, and I seem to have a pretty good success rate.
Well, I reuse my cells over and over and over again.
Oh, you
so
do?
Mine got wax on the edges, and I got to pull out last round's royal jelly that's all desiccated in there, pull it out there. So yeah, mine are all cruddy, but I try to clean them out a little bit. So priming, I think probably,
Do you wash them? Do you wash them like in like hot water or something like that?
No,
Clean them?
no.
No.
I get if there's any old desiccated royal jelly, I kind of scrape it out of there with one of these like little dental tools or something just to get it out of there. So it's just a raw plastic bottom, but it usually still has a wax lip around it. It's got, the old wax on the edges, and I don't know, kind of looks like it's a wax cup.
Well, that's pretty cool. There we go back. So anything new with you, Kyle? What's exciting over in
No,
your
I've
field?
just got to go out and on Wednesday, I think it is, and check for mated queens and equalize out some of those nukes and get ready for my next little trial. But and that and the prototyping the CO2 monitor scenario. So we're just about to order those CO2 monitors and a little remote data bank or whatever. It sits in the apiary and collects all the data from those sensors, and then I just go and take out the SIM card and replace it or download it on my phone, take it home, put it on the computer, and then I'll be able to see the graph. So, well, that's what I'm hoping will happen. I've got to prototype all this, and then I got to put it in a couple of hives and see where I go and see if it even works to start with, and exactly where the sensors are going to go, and all that stuff yet. So it's a fingers crossed and hope I can get some sort of difference result, and then it's a case of trialing it, because like I was saying earlier, the mite levels in those two observations were too. The gated hive was just too. It was too good not to investigate what's going on there, and I can talk to the humidity, but I can't talk to the CO2, and it could be one or the other. So I can't really say anything until I've investigated the CO2 scenario first.
Yeah, I know. Let's see. Well, what was Chuck's website? I think that was Alan. It's what is it? Florida Beekeepers or Florida?
No, just at Chuck Cook Honeybees or something like that on YouTube. You'll find it. You'll see my mug on one of the icons.
Yeah, Chuck
Looks like
Cook
me.
Honeybees. I think it is.
So Kyle, what's the CO2 thing you're investigating? I'm sorry, there sounds like there's some history to this. I'm not familiar with you monitoring CO2 levels in the hive in effect on the brood or something, or what are you checking?
Well, with my product, the bees will shut the door, and so that they can get to the internal entrance, and they can shut the door. So they actually control the internal environment down to the last part per million, basically. So I can talk with my data and stuff to the humidity control that they exert on the internal hive of the hive. And during one of the trials that I did, I had the hive set up in a sealed manner, so they were completely sealed up for a whole year, 14 months. And I ran them untreated for I went on 6 months with a known mite load prior to the trial. And the trial, I had an ungated hive. I had 220 mites per 300 bees, and in the gated hive I had 20. So, but what you got to remember with the gated hive being at 20, that was a level. So they started at 20. They went 6 months with no treatment, and they didn't grow. But what the problem was, that's phonetic mites, right? I don't know whether the mites were reproducing or not in the hive. And also they were right next to that ungated hive, so they were probably robbing and transferring mites over. With the control that they have over the internal space, with the gates, they were able to control that humidity even in a wooden box and in a really up and down humidity environment, to a really nice level at what they wanted, right? And they're closing the door with their bodies and then opening it as they want and all the rest of it. So with that level of control, there's certain parameters that might be being achieved in there when it comes to CO2. I don't know this yet. I've got to trial it. I'm just sourcing some CO2 humidity and temperature sensors. But CO2 sensors are usually quite expensive, so I found some really good quality ones that are testing or monitoring for real CO2 levels, not an assumptive or an estimate based on another gas not being there, for instance. These are actual CO2 monitors. So I've got to get all the hardware and software linked up, and then I've got to put these CO2 monitors in gated and a non-gated hive. And these hives will be completely sealed up other than the doors. And the first part of it is just to see whether there is a difference in CO2 levels between the two hives. If I'm getting a difference, then I need to muck around with the height of the sensors, because CO2 sinks, so it's no good having it on the floor. Well, I don't know what it is. I've got to prototype it and see whether I'm getting effective CO2 levels in an area in the hive, i.e., where the brood will be or where the colony will be during winter or any time. There needs to be a CO2 level which is different to an ungated hive for me to carry on. So if and when I get that result, then I go and buy a bunch more sensors and so on, and I'll set up just a preliminary trial with 10 hives. So it'll be 5 with gates and 5 without. And then if I'm getting a good result with the CO2 levels, then I'll start monitoring for mites on those over probably a 6-month period. I probably don't need to go that long, but anyway, just to be sure. And then if I get good results with the mites on that, with a known heightened CO2 level in the hive, then I'll go for funding to do a proper 50 and 50 unit trial. But the CO2 sensors are like $100 each, and so I've got to be a bit careful with what's going on with my finances. I don't have any, so I've got to. It's a bit of a.
To kind of get you up to speed, Chuck, is Kyle here. He's the inventor of the hive gate over in New Zealand. It's sold over here at Betterby, I believe it is.
Yep, I've seen it.
Yeah,
and and all that. So he's diving into all that kind of stuff. Do you have a YouTube channel, Kyle, or not, or just your hive gate?
Through the BIQs, just through the BIQ thing. It's not really a channel as such. It's more just about how to fit the hive gate in different scenarios for small hive beetle and all that.
More of a website type of thing, yeah.
But I will be working on, like, that night on that I showed all that footage. That's the first time I've shown any of that stuff. It's only ever been known as a robbing apparatus. So that control that the bees are exerting on the hive is a really important part of it. But I had to do it. I had to gather more evidence and so on before I start talking to it. And
right.
And now I'm just looking at the what that means for your colony, right? So it's a bee generated behavior, so it's got to be good either way. But just nailing down on all the specifics that are happening so that I can communicate that to people, because it's not just there's I don't know how to put it. It's generated conditions, so it should be good no matter which way you look at it. But I need what it is, right? So that's where I'm at. So I'll start releasing some of the footage from that trial, I guess. Got to get over my side of things. Anyway, so I will start putting that up, and then there's a ton of data behind that footage as well. But getting the data analyzed and processed is a real problem for me. So, but I'll get there eventually. Yeah.
Yep. Just a shout out to Mark Miller. Hi, he just got into the chat tonight. And he's a truck driver. He just rolled in after 1,085 miles of truck driving. Better him than me, that's for sure. So anyway, Chuck, you maintain, I think, what is it, around 15 hives or so, up to 30 at the most?
Yeah, depending on how you count nukes and queens, it's probably best to say I run about 30 queens. between nukes, mating nukes, and then
Yeah, I
production hives.
consider a nuke. I mean, I run around a dozen honey production hives and somewhere around 20 nukes.
What
Uh,
size mating nuke are you running?
You know, I do a combination depending on the number of queens I've got. My favorite is three frame decoat style nuke, and I do use some styrofoam minis when I got more cells and more queens than I need to know what to do with. Obviously, not as many bees in the styrofoams, but if you're knocking it out pretty quick and you keep an eye on them close, they can really do a good job. I never get to laying workers in a styrofoam mini. If I got a three framer that doesn't mate, I may have laying workers in there, because they got so many bees without brood. So, so to answer your question, three framers are my favorite skinny one. And during the winter, I stick them all together so they all share heat. And then when it heats up, I can spread them out around the yard, which is almost like having a queen castle when you squish them all together.
I've got a bunch of two framers, the two frame mating nukes, but didn't really do much with them. So this is my first year grafting. So I'm going to try to.
I started with twos and went to threes because it was just, I don't know. It's almost like I want a brood and a food and then a foundation frame in my mating nuke. So they got a little bit of room to grow out. With a two, you got a food and a brood, and then boom, they're done, right? So you got to go from a 2 to a 5 very quickly. With a 3, you almost can leave them in there for a couple months. I've successfully overwintered in Florida in a 3. So just
well,
a matter
I'm
of
not far north of you. I'm in South Carolina, so
yeah. It's just it really probably it's all a matter of timing, and just like a mini, you got to manage them every week. A 2 framer, you got to manage them a few more days than that. A 3 framer, you could probably let them go for several weeks. So a 5 framer, you can let them go a month.
Yeah, I've got 2 frame mating boxes. I got them off of what's it called, Barnyard Bees, and I made them, I don't know, 5 years ago or more, and they do fine. I mean, you can leave them in there and stuff like you say. You got to watch about whether or not she's mated or whatever and stuff like that. But
you just got to decide how you're going to feed them, right? You got a jar on the top. You got to put a feeder. How you're going to feed your nukes is the challenge. With those minis, they got that little section you got to keep full, but it doesn't hold very much. With the 2 framers, you got to put a jar on top, or you got to get one of those little disc feeders.
That's what I do. Yeah, I put a jar on the top, and then here a couple years ago, I made a box that goes over top of that jar. And actually, there's the two pieces of wood that go down. I made them long enough to where they go and they slip across on the side of that 2 frame box. Holds the lid, holds that box on there, and holds the lid on there and all. And I got about 20 or 30 of them, and do it that way. And then, so when you populate those 2 framers, and presumably are all within the same yard, you lock them up for a while to kind of so they stay in there as far as kind of
I lock up my minis for 3 days. So if I'm just putting bees with no queen, I keep those closed up in the little styrofoams for 3 days and let them lose their acclimation. Yeah. If I'm putting frames inside of a 2 or a 3, as long as they got full capped brood and some open brood on there, I don't close them up because they'll stay on top of that brood. So that's the beauty of the full framers. If you're putting brood in there with them, they're not going to go anywhere.
I find locking them up 3 or 4 days, and like you say, they lose their memory, as I call it, and they stay there.
They catch amnesia.
Yeah, they do. Yep. What is it? 3 miles or 3 days? What is it? It's out of the distance.
3 feet or 3 miles or something like that.
I don't know. It just, you kind of find out what works for you and all that kind of stuff. But I like your starter finisher concept there a lot.
Good. It's an evolutionary process, and I'm
just glad that you're on tonight and explaining all that, so I can. Yeah. It's always have multiple ways of doing the same situation, but depending on what your situation is at the time, as far as bees go.
I have killed many bees in a dedicated starter because I didn't have enough water in there. It just, I mean, there's those dedicated starters can be needy. You got to really tend to them if you're packing them full of bees and they just don't have the resources they need to stay alive. So I feel like a full production hive is designed to keep those bees alive. So if I can just let that be the nature and find a way of packing them. And that was my method with the double screen board and shaking in the top is how I do it. So.
Yeah, I just, I don't know. I think I was going to do it this year. I got a licensed 6-frame nuke that I can put 6/6. And I don't know. Let's see that. Yeah, I got a queen excluder would fit that. I don't have a double. Not sure if I can have a double screen board that would fit that though. After thinking about it, that's the problem.
I make all my stuff. So if I wanted a 6/6, I just go out there and go through my scrap heap and figure out how to make one. So if anybody came out to my yard and wanted to buy my equipment, they'd be like, "This doesn't fit." Well, sorry, it's custom. I mean, most of it's Langstroth dimensions, but I'm not a master carpenter. I'm definitely a amateur carpenter.
Yeah, I like that little grafting frame holder. That's pretty simple. Looks to be quite simple. Works.
Yeah, that was, and honestly, you look through these catalogs on Man Lake or whatever, and you look what people have come up with, and you're like, oh, that makes sense. And you're out there in your shop and you're leaning a frame on a jar or something just to get the right angle. And, every woodworker in the world knows how to make a jig, and that's all that is just a jig to hold the frame at the right angle.
Yeah.
How long are you going tonight, Charlie?
Well, I might go up to 11, and that's about it for tonight.
I'll probably give you guys about another 5 minutes. I got to pick up my wife in the morning early.
I don't know, maybe 10:30 at the most. I mean, I got work tomorrow morning too myself. It kind of depends. Wiley or Bob, you want to check out early tonight too?
Well, I'm driving to Charlotte to pick up the syrup, so
yeah,
I got to be there at 11:30 in the morning.
Well, we can cut it off at 10:30 tonight. Everybody's got stuff to do tomorrow and all. So,
yeah.
But
we'll see. We'll see how my first graft goes this weekend.
Good.
It's gonna be interesting. I almost said, you know what? Tomorrow's Saturday. I'll just do it tomorrow afternoon and just knock it out and get it out of the way.
If you're grafting tomorrow, have you already made your starter queenless?
Yeah, I did that actually. 3 days ago?
Oh, so it's been queenless a few days. Oh,
yeah. So my goal was tomorrow to go through and make sure 4 days, anything that was old enough they could make queen cells in, that I was going to knock down. And
save that jelly.
Give them 24 hours, and then and then get to work. So
save that jelly.
I mean, that's when I graft, is after work. That way I have time. Because that was always my concern. Everybody else was grafting during the middle of the day and whatever. And then I just started to, I said, you know what, I'll do it in the evening, after hours. And it worked just fine, and I just got into a rhythm with it and all that stuff. So
that's the goal. So we'll see how it comes out. I mean, you can't fail, right? I mean, even if I get one, that's one more than I had. So
is this not your first year grafting?
No,
you grafted before?
My first year grafting, yeah.
Oh, it is. Okay, good.
Yeah, it's his first time ever grafting.
So year,
let's go through that real quick. What are you using? JZBZ cells, or what do you got for equipment?
I'm actually using the Saracell graft.
Okay.
So I don't know if you've seen them, and I had one until I said something about it. So the Saracell cup, if I can get it loose, because I jammed it in a roller cage. thing I like about them is they're one piece.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and
Okay.
they fit right in a roller cage.
Yeah, so that's like the Nico, right? It's got the roller cage friction style. So that is the downside of the JZBZ is you don't have a roller cage solution without making a custom frame that supports a roller cage just to snug up against the JZBZs, right? So
And
the
then
Nikos, yeah.
then they have this little frame that they just spin on, right? Oh, that was
Okay.
good, but they just spin on.
Okay, I see. Okay, actually, wow, I've never even seen that. So how they just kind of snap in there or slide in?
They spin in and
They
lock.
spin, or they twist and lock. Okay, great.
So,
It
well, they
looks
don't.
like that'll hold about what, 15, 20,
Well,
15, 17 across?
It's got two of them. It's got one on the top and one here. So as many as I can jam in there, I guess.
So do those
They hold
bars
up.
come out?
You can unscrew them, but no, they don't.
Right. So how are your cups going to be when you're grafting?
So I can spin the middle one. So I'm probably
Okay.
just going to do the middle row for the first time, probably like 15, maybe.
Oh, so you graft in the frame.
Yeah, I can
Ah,
just spin it.
yeah.
Now,
You just need a little bit
I think
more
it'd be
room
a
on
pain
your
in the
shop.
butt if it'd be hard to do it. You can't do the top frame, so that's the drawback, right?
Or it looks like, I guess you might be able to stack up those cells and just graft into the cells and then very, quickly twist the cells into the frame after you're done grafting, but you just wouldn't want to knock over the cells, right?
It'd be my luck. Knock them all off the desk.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting.
Gonna give it a shot and see. But last year I found that there was no queen supplier in my area. So when people were looking for queens, being the entrepreneurial spirit that I am,
Yeah.
I went down to a queen breeder and bought them in bulk and got them, and then basically just banked them. And people were coming to buy queens from me. They were driving 2 hours to pick up queens from me, and I was making $12 a queen. Well, now if I can make my own queens, now I'm making $40 a queen instead of 12. So
Yeah. Nice.
I
Good.
can grow my operation. So
And yeah, I mean, and obviously you can sell cells, you can sell virgins, like Corey Stevens does, or you can sell mated and marked queens, and then you can sell mated, marked, and clipped queens. If some people want their queens clipped, and you can charge them a few extra dollars if you're going to be careful and cut one of the wings off.
now, when you do that, you're just taking basically a fingernail clipper and clipping the end of it.
You could do it with a fingernail clipper, probably like a little scissors that you might use for like nose hairs or something, very tiny scissors, and just cut one wing. Little kind of barber's kind of scissors, stainless, something that, and you only want to cut one of the 4 wings, so not both on one side, just cut one of them, the long one on top. If you cut more than that, it's not going to hurt anything, but that's really all they say. She's not going to be able to fly that way anyway. If she tries to swarm, you're going to find her on the ground in a ball of bees.
Right. And you just go pick her up.
Well, when you're like this year, I usually sell cells and mated queens, and I'm going to switch over to selling virgins and mated. Do you find putting, do you mark your virgins prior to
No.
mating?
And you don't get a mark in my yard unless you have a laying pattern, because I don't know if you're worth anything. So, yeah. Mark. My method of marking is laying. Now, that doesn't mean that she doesn't deserve a mark because she was born in this year and she should be red if she's born this year. But my methodology of knowing a queen is laying in my yard is if she's got a mark, I've already identified she's laying.
Yeah, Bob. This is the cell bar, right?
Yep.
And I've just put a bit of wood on there, and I've got the screws going into the wood, so it works the same. This is on a 3/4 depth, so you can do it on your double. So the one on the top, you just have it sitting there, and you can just do the same thing put them away in the hive. I've got it like that. It's only on a 3/4, so I can still put my cages on this. Just run another bar, whatever. But that's another way to do your top bar. The only thing I'd be worried about is whether you're going to get enough room to put your cages doubled up into that frame or not.
I got you.
It's a bit dusty. You see how much I use them. but that's another option, right? It's just you can lay them down and then do your grafting and then put them back in.
Small piece of wood in there.
It's the same with when you take them out. Same with when you take them out, rather than mucking around trying to get in there, you can actually take it sideways and just plug them out. But it makes that bar sturdy. You won't bend your bar and end up with crooked bars and stuff.
Well, I bought that. Actually, I'll take that back. I didn't buy that. That was given to me, and it was already on a frame, right? It was already put together. So the middle one became very clear. That's easy to turn and do, but the bottom one they put in down here. So I guess technically I could move it down a little, down, and be able to work it better.
You, Hale Eyes wants to know, Chuck, did you source your queens out of Louisiana?
Well, I got my VSH POL line queen. She came from the VP Queens VSH POL 2.2 line, but it was sourced through a breeder queen bought from the B Farm, BFARM in Louisiana is where I got the one that I'm currently breeding off of. So, she's a second generation mutt, honestly, at this point, but that's kind of where she came from, just to answer the question.
Well, they're all from Louisiana. Hale Hives and Lee and Brad that was just on the screen. They're all down in Louisiana. Yeah, I could just move that bar half-inch down too. Just unscrew it from the inside, drop this down, drop that one down a little bit. Then I got two bars that I can twist.
As long as you can still fit your cages on there, eh?
Yeah, so yeah, I could probably.
Well, so now, the interesting thing on that is you imagine an 1.5 inch cell hanging down, getting that cage on, right? So if you can twist that bar out, maybe you can get that cage on and twist it back in. But in most scenarios, getting cages on cells that are already drawn, the geometry doesn't quite work right unless it's designed very well.
Right.
I don't really.
Depends on my bee engineers.
I like a JZBZ myself.
The only thing I don't like about the JZBZ is you got to have so many different parts, right? You can't just get a part. You got to buy 2 or 3 parts.
You're thinking the Nico. You're thinking the Nico there. JZBZ is just the cup.
Oh,
You're talking about Nikot or Nico or whatever, how you pronounce
it. Just the cup that goes.
Yeah.
With the. Oh, I got some of those too.
The pin on it.
Yeah. I got so frustrated trying to find the right parts for my Nico system. I started 3D printing them all. I created my own models and 3D printing them. So I've got all the spare parts I need now and I can print them whenever I want. But you're right. If you don't have one of those bases or you don't have the right cup adapters and then the roller cages, if you get them from China, then they don't fit. And, you got to get the right ones. So.
Well, guys, it's 10:30, and everybody seems to have
I got to go to bed.
Jobs and stuff to do tonight or tomorrow morning for us. I know Kyle; he's up for the day.
He's about to crack open a new pint, probably.
Yeah.
I know it's.
Mr.
All
Chuck,
right, Mark Miller wants to know: do you have any VHS traits in your bees?
I have not done the Harbo assay on my bees to honestly scientifically say I have traits yet. So to truly say you have VSH tendencies, you got to do the Harbo assay and give them a score. I have not done that yet, so it wouldn't be fair to say yes or no scientifically.
Yeah. So anyway, it's been a short night tonight normally. But I'm glad everybody did show in. We had over 60 some people here tonight. So next.
I don't even know if I'm on my channel or Lee's channel on Tuesday.
I don't know. Next Friday will be the 3rd of March. We'll be back at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. Now, I will say February the 10th, I will not be able to have a live show that night. I'll have some other obligations, but anyway,
You mean
I'm
March 10th, our 1 year anniversary? You got other obligations? There's nothing
Yeah,
more important than our 1 year
there's a
stream
there's a
anniversary.
bluegrass band that's coming to town, and I'm going to go see them.
Bluegrass band. Oh my gosh.
All right, guys, have a great night. Thanks for the invite.
I'm-
Enjoyed meeting you, Kyle.
Nice,
and,
nice for coming
enjoyed
on,
Ryan
Chuck.
Bob.
I enjoyed your talk, and come back next week.
All right,
And
so long,
then
everybody.
also
Yeah.
Tuesday nights at 8. You got Bob Walker's Bee Ranch, and then you also have Kodiak Farms. I'm not sure which one's coming up.
Lee, is he
Great.
still in the chat? He'll know.
No, he left already.
Did he? I think it's on Lee's, but
Kodiak Farms.
could
So
be
if
either
you're,
way.
so
Okay.
like it's
All right.
Good
all
night.
right, Carl, we'll catch y'all later.
All right, good night.